Screen/Out in Schools, which is the program where I specifically work within Out in Screen, an organization that brings queer films and education into BC schools and communities to engage youth on issues of bullying and homophobia. I'm here in place of Ben Berdon, our Director of Programming at Out on Screen and the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. So, in this type of public forum, I almost always would like to identify myself first as an out gay woman, as a feminist, and as a racialized woman of color. I am grateful for the space that allows my voice to be heard because all too often these are the very identities that silence me in the world. All of us here have different pieces to add to the larger picture on this panel. But this is where I like to utilize my own experiences and identities as a jumping off point from where I engage and incorporate queer, racialized women's voices in this space. So on October 20th, I was one of the speakers at the vigil, the Candlelight Vigil to End Homophobic Bullying, as a response to the recent rash of youth suicides due to homophobia and bullying. What started out as a simple Facebook event created by youth Ryan Clayton for himself and for his friends snowballed and spawned into a media sensation where more than 500 people came out, lit their candles, and supported queer youth everywhere. At the vigil, I told a little story. Can I get a slide, please? I told a little story about how a couple of weekends prior, I was walking out of a bar with my girlfriend, and a car drove by and a guy screamed, "Dykes," out the window at us. My response, even through the mellowing influence of alcohol, was immediate. I felt the adrenaline danger, warning taking over my body, and I froze. And it was this biological plea for caution and alert. I spoke about how I turned to my girlfriend with a smile on my face, bravely, and assured her with the best of my ability that everything was okay, chill out, and that this gave me the perfect motivation to write a speech that I gave at the vigil. I remembered it as a moment of my defiance, though, and resistance to homophobia, when I no longer can feel hurt by being called a dyke. But sometimes I find myself still buried under the weight of that word, and it feels like I'm slipping through the cracks where homophobia and intolerance struck their axis. And I just keep on reclaiming that word until I convince myself to believe that it is no longer hurtful. Walking in the margins as gay women, as lesbians, as dykes, invariably heightens our vulnerability and sense of safety in the world. As a member of the queer and lesbian community, it pains me to say that I have bared witness to the atrocity of violence against women and violence against queer women in Vancouver. Over the summer, my drink was spiked, and I blacked out inside the washroom of a club and ended up in the ER. I had friends who watched over me like a hawk, so nothing really happened to me. And the irony of that situation is that prior to my work and involvement with Out on Screen and Out in Schools, I worked as a frontline victim service worker at a women's rape crisis center, Women Against Violence Against Women. And I would tell my clients to never leave your drinks unattended, as I supported them and accompanied them to Vancouver General Hospital Sexual Assault Service at 3 in the morning, or down at the police station while they give their testimony and response to police officers detailing their rape. A survivor of targeted violence faces not only the trauma of the assault itself, but also faces invisibilization and social isolation in the community. Let's not even begin to talk about reporting to the police if it means having to come out to a man in a uniform, as well as to friends and family. Because still, there is an extremely deep fear and panic, anxiety and hatred towards queer people, towards women. Homophobia kills. They are the judging and condemning voices and rapey stares that despise us, that sees us as subhuman, as a joke. So much so that they put us in danger because of how and who we love. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. It pains me to witness the exoticization of our sexuality in the media that fulfills the fantasy of straight male pornographic gazes. Lesbian porn is not porn made for queer women. The media perpetuates constant reiteration that lesbianism is sexy and that is dangerous. Social media, like Facebook, is powerful in how it engages youth, but it is also dangerous. We know this because just recently, a 16-year-old girl from Maple Ridge was sexually assaulted, and pictures and videos of the assault was posted and plastered all over Facebook. Let's not even begin to talk about the horrific comments that followed in response to those pictures online by her peers and her friends and strangers on the internet. It pains me to hear stories from my friends, my ex-girlfriends, their girlfriends and friends of friends who share the same story of sexual harassment and violence over and over with the same fear and trauma that details the amount of targeting and gay bashing in our community. No amount of self-hypnosis or effort will help me walk those few blocks alone on the streets at night, on my way home, on my way out of a club. I am not at all protected. In this city, women and queer women are bearing the brunt of patriarchal and homophobic coercion, and frankly, women hating. Because how dare we women love other women as friends, as lovers, as allies? Next slide, please. Thank you. Can you just click through the stats? Should be 3 clicks. Thank you. The next slide I have up here really is the reason why I am here today, doing the work that I do every single day. It is what keeps me alive and motivated. My question to you, actually, to the audience, is what do these stats remind you of? Do they remind you of anyone else? Anyone? Well, I'm going to tell you. First Nations and Aboriginal folks. I think it's useful to be mindful of the way that marginalized identities are often intersecting in a much more complex, nuanced, and layered way. You can imagine what it must be like for an Aboriginal person who may identify as queer or two-spirited or something else. And we can then begin to understand how systemic oppression is often twofold or threefold and layered, if not more. Since Allen School's inception in 2004, we have reached more than 18,000 students in high schools across the province of BC. We presented in Surrey, Coquitlam, Richmond, and in rural communities like 100 Mile House, Prince George, Vernon, Nelson, and the Gulf Islands. But there's still so much work to be done. Slide, please. Every year we host an anti-homophobia youth public service announcement, or a PSA competition. And I would encourage all educators and folks in this room to visit allenschools.com to visit more, to learn more about the PSA competition, and challenge your students and challenge youth across BC to participate. As I'm nearing the end of my presentation, I'm going to show just the winning PSA from this year, and you can see more videos as well on our website. Can you just click the